Now I'd like to introduce our featured modeler, Peter Mack. Peter is really a professional model maker. He's with the Association of Professional Model Makers, and he's helped me on one presentation that we made to a local school system here in Florida. And Peter, welcome back. I really do appreciate you being here this evening.
Thank you, Jim. Thanks for having me.
Listen, I was on your Zoom meeting that your association had this afternoon, talking about your program that you sponsor once a year for the kids in the hobby, in the world that make models and go in your contest. Would you like to talk about the contest a little bit?
Sure. The contest is open to any student, actually internationally, that's willing to build a model and present it for judging. I think we get a lot of models from the UK, from the University of Bournemouth. Hopefully we'll have some entrants from Northeast Wisconsin Technical College. They have a wonderful model making program there, and Bemidji State University in Bemidji, Minnesota. They also have a model making program. Any of the students can offer up their model, whether it's something they've worked on in the past, something they did for a class, or for whatever reason, just for fun. And then it will be put into kind of the pot and judged by a panel of professional model makers, and we pick the top 3 can win prizes, and then there's several honorable mentions based on model execution and finish and other different categories.
I really think that's a wonderful program that you guys sponsor, because it allows the kids that may be in the hobby right now. I think personally that model railroaders can bring an awful lot of value to being a professional model railroader because of the experience and the model making that they get involved with. So I'm really interested in that aspect of the program.
I would agree. Just listening to your program just today, you're all the folks that I listen to are the amount of detail that you go to, it's quite impressive.
Well, listen, how would a person get involved to be a professional model maker? Let's say there's a lot of, the hobby is trying to attract younger people to the hobby. And I know some of the companies out there are thinking, we'd like to be able to figure out how maybe it's easier for us to attract employees to become professional model makers. And in that extent, we both have the same issue, the same problem. And I'm wondering, what can a model railroader do who really feels that, model making might be a great career, but how do I get involved in it? How would I even know where to go, or what schools to go to, or what programs to take, or how I should prepare myself?
Well, it's a pretty broad question. I'll kind of break it down this way. If you think about model making as not so much a career, but as what people do, we've been building models for thousands of years. If there is a product, somebody that builds the first one is really building the prototype of that. And then usually in any modern day product, the development cycle is the initial builds, an iteration, more iterations, concerns for tooling, and that type of thing. So it's actually quite common. I think the problem is not only for professionals and amateurs, that people don't realize that they're building models. Obviously, you do. You're building model railroads, but that work at any company that develops a product of any sort has somebody that's doing that initial model making work. Perhaps it's an engineer, a technician. They don't call themselves model makers per se. At my company, at Steelcase, we have a whole staff of, I think right now we're 27, 28 model makers in-house, and then use a wide variety of people on the outside to do model work. I think you could do a kind of a local search for companies that do product development. If you are interested, you're gonna have to really put forth a little effort and, you know, stick your neck out and ask if you can get involved in that. It's not an advertised thing, and I think that's part of the problem. People don't know that model work is done. If you talk to industrial designers, they are really concerned about the visual aspects of whatever that new product is. Occasionally, industrial designers are very hands-on and will build their own versions of their ideas. Engineers are the same way. When you combine the three skills, model making, industrial design, and engineering, you can really move quite quickly from an idea to a very complex product that's manufacturable in a pretty short amount of time. I don't know if that answers your question exactly. It's kind of very difficult. I did a presentation this morning with some high school students about how do you get into model making. We were really more talking about model making as a career, what it is and what's involved in that. The opportunity to become a model maker is a little bit more difficult in that you need to go out and find companies that are doing product development. So if in the area you live in, there's companies that make products, and it can be anything. As long as they're continually upgrading their products and making new things, they're doing a product development cycle, and there's a need to prototype, and that's really what we do.
Is this kind of a dead-end kind of a position in a company, or is there growth for model makers?
I think there's a lot of growth for model makers. I've been a model maker for 36 years. I've started off as an apprentice. I went through an apprenticeship, worked my way up to, you know, model maker, senior model maker. I'm a principal model maker now. I have a journeyman's card from the Department of Labor. And my job now, while I don't build a lot of models, I manage a lot of model makers, and I do a lot of consulting about how to bring value to products through three-dimensional visualization, how people can sell an idea using a model, not having to have a full-blown production part ready to go. I think that there's a lot of things that model making can do. I used an example this morning as that about 30 years ago, when 3D printing became a tool to use, I had a master pattern maker literally shaking a chisel in my face, telling me that the CNC machine that just came into the shop would never do what he could do. If you look at 3D printing, when that came online, I heard a lot of people saying, well, that'll be the end of model making. There'll be no need to do that. I think anybody that's ever worked with a 3D printed part knows that when it comes off the machine, it's not ready to show to anyone. There's support material that needs to be removed, build lines that need to be worked out, a lot of sanding, a lot of finish work, priming, painting, before it's ready for presentation to anyone or to display. So I think there's a very wide variety of things. The field continues to grow. There's a lot of computer work that happens now. I learned when I entered the field, I was kind of at a crossroads. At the beginning was the end of master pattern makers and the pattern maker trade, but it was the beginning of CNC work. So I got the kind of the best of both worlds. That the students that I instruct now, or the apprentices that work for me now, come to me with a huge computer background. They think in different terms than I do. I learned how to draft at a drafting board where I'm just judging for a lot of the audience that I see here. They probably learned how to draft also. And CAD is a completely different thing. I work with CAD people that they only ever learn to design something on a computer screen. And if you ask them to actually physically draw it, they can't. And I think that's it's not a bad thing. It's just something that it shows the growth of the skills. I don't know what the next thing will be. I'm sure there's going to be a next thing. So we'll continue to learn and move forward that way.
You mentioned the Department of Labor journeyman card that you have. What is that all about? I mean, does the Department of, is that kind of like a union card?
At one time, it was very prevalent in union shops. Although you don't have to be in a union to be a journeyman. So what that is the company that you work for that sponsors the program in their building says, we will train people over a very specific range of time. For a model maker, it's 8,000 hours of training, which is 4 years. And you do very specific so many hours of milling, so many hours of lathe work. In the furniture industry, so much hours of upholstery work. Mm-hmm. And once you've completed the hours in training under a journeyman as an apprentice, and you can prove that you can do all of those things, you're given that status of being a journeyman. I've met some people that are journeymen that are just truly amazing model makers, and other people that have kind of moved along through the program and they can do the work. But I think the important part is that you have some passion about the work that you do. It is the Department of Labor sponsors the program is really what it is.
It's kind of up to each company to develop their own training program. Is that what I'm hearing?
Definitely, yeah. So we think of, a lot of times we think of journeyman like a machinist or a woodworker or a plumber even. There's lots of skilled trades that have apprenticeship programs. And once you complete your apprenticeship, you're considered a journeyman.
Right. And so the model maker has that kind of program, but it is company specific.
It is very company specific. So every company could have a different style of model making. If you think about the breadth of model making, architectural models, or my journeyman's card actually says furniture model maker on it, because that's what Steelcase supported. I would think that if you worked for GM or Ford, the journeyman's card might say automotive model maker. I don't know that, but I'm sure that there are specific things, and it's how the company wrote the program.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's fascinating. Well, listen, what should an apprentice think that they're going to encounter when they come to work for you, say? Person is out of college, out of high school, wherever he comes from, and he says, "Hi, my name's Jim Keller. So what's my job now?"
I tell all of my apprentices that I expect them to make mistakes. Sounds crazy. I know they're going to make mistakes, and I want them to, because that's how you learn. I would never put somebody in a position to be unsafe. You know, I just like go over to that mill and start doing something. That's not fair to them. But I want people to not feel that I'm watching them like, boy, you made a mistake on that. Now that's a check mark against you. I think that's a positive thing, because when you learn how to recover from that mistake and you save your model, and every one of you, I'm sure, as doing model railroads, you've slipped with an X-Acto, you've done whatever, the glue didn't set right, the glue set too fast. You can name 100 different problems. It's how you recover from those problems that make you a good model maker. Not that you glued something together correctly. It's if it went wrong and you recovered from that, those mistakes, you learn from that, and hopefully you don't do that problem again. Sometimes you do. But I think everyone could tell a story of where they were making something, it broke, it got caught up in the machine. There's just hundreds of different things that could go wrong. And then it's how you recover from that. So that's one of the first things I tell the apprentices, that I know they're going to make mistakes. I want them to. That's how they learn. And then don't be afraid to try something different. In model making, there's really no set rules. We're allowed to experiment. We're allowed to be creative, just as you are with your maybe a paint scheme, or I know you're trying to replicate things as they were in real life. So there's a set of rules, but how you get to that end is really up to you. And I think that's the wonderful thing about model making.
What would you like to see a person have as far as either education or experience that comes to you as an apprentice? What, you know, in the US, for example, there's just not that many programs out there. There's just not that many universities that you know, have anything at all. And the high schools have eliminated basically the shops and that kind of thing. So again, you know, the model railroaders are out there. The kind of philosophy that you just said is exactly what model railroading philosophy is all about. Everybody makes mistakes, but it's what you do to correct the error that really separates the modelers from other, you know, the skill levels are there. So, you know, given that, and a person, you know, he's a good model railroader, or he's good with whatever models he's building, and says, geez, I'd really like to do this as a career, but there's no university available to me. You know, I've got a high school diploma, but, you know, I don't have technical knowledge, for example. Maybe my school didn't have a robotic class, or, you know, or where I might gain that experience. So how do I get that experience that you need? I mean, I'm a model railroader. That's all the experience I got.
I can say I'll make one comment about making mistakes, and I think this really exemplifies it. At the very beginning of this program today, somebody was showing using wood glue to show an oil spill as a detail. I thought, it's like, what a happy accident. That's one of the wonderful things about model making, is that there are no rules. And when you see something like that, it's your attention to detail that you take something from the abstract and apply it to a very physical thing, just from your own creativity. That's an accident that's happy. that makes a wonderful detail thing that, I tell you what, I would notice that in a model. If I was looking at it, I'd say, hey, look at that. It's got an oil dripping out. That's fabulous. That's top level work there. So I think that was one thing that I noticed today that I don't remember the man's name, but it was very interesting. And I love little accidents like that when you find something that works and can be applied to either your project, or keep that kind of in the back of your head and use it down the road. I guess for your other question, I would say curiosity. Having a sense of curiosity would, if you were to come into my shop, in effect untrained, one of the hardest things we have finding young people is that they show up to work every day. Literally. I can't get people to come to work every day. There's always some problem that they seem to think is more important than them being there. And that I should just be okay with that. And I'm not. So I have a difficult time with that issue. But if we get past that and you come to work every day, I want you to show up with a certain amount of curiosity and a desire to learn. I would assume that the majority of you are self-taught in your hobby. Even being, I'll say amateurs, a lot of the work you could do could be very much professional. You could be paid for that type of work, for the attention to detail you do. I guess maybe I'll ask you this question, kind of work it back the other way, and maybe we can come up with a better solution. If you had built a scale freight car, and I don't know enough about model railroading to really speak about it, but if you were to have built this and then you go to a show, can you sell those cars? That would make you a professional. Do you do that? I would assume.
There are people on this show right now that have done those kind of things, and that are doing those kind of things today. I mean, there are very talented model railroaders.
Oh, it's obvious just looking at the clips that I just saw here. It's incredibly talented.
Yeah.
I think some people do that model making for pleasure, and I think that's a wonderful thing. I was fortunate enough to, when I did go to college. I went to college for metalworking. I have a degree in industrial technology with an emphasis on metalworking. When I was looking for employment after I graduated, I wanted to be a mold maker. Every mold shop I went to, they were like, why would you want to start an apprenticeship? You already have a college degree. It's like, well, I'm kind of doing it backwards, but the people that were interviewing me were going back to school for the same program I went to. They had a wife and 2 kids, and they wanted to advance in their company. I knew that going into the shop, I would have to do an apprenticeship and, drill holes for 6 months and, sweep the floor and clean coolant tanks and all of those things to learn my trade. That's what I wanted to do. I couldn't get anybody to believe me in that. A happy accident. I saw an ad for a model shop here close to where I live now. It's like, well, I can do all of those things. I applied, I got the job, and it was the best thing for me. It was a better fit for me just because of the diversity and all of the different materials, and it just fit me better than a single thing of machining metal every day. So sometimes it's just a happy accident how that comes along. But I think you can also set yourself up for that lucky break.
Let me ask you this. I know that your association has a free membership. And, it's, to me, if I was a young model railroader, I would take advantage of that. I think some of the things that people I've been able to meet in the association, and some of the Zoom calls that I've been able to attend have really been great for me. I mean, I've met some wonderful people, and I think that it could be of real value to model railroaders and possibly help them find a career in the future.
I think that's similar to what I was saying, that you have to kind of put your neck out there. You have to do a little research, set yourself up to be lucky. So if you were to go for the student membership, I don't know if there's a cost to that. I'm not positive what it is. If there is a cost to it, it's not very much. And then put yourself out there and say, hey, I'm looking for a job. But be aware, and I talk to students about this all the time. I'm on the advisory board for NWTC in Wisconsin and Bemidji in Minnesota. I go and talk to students there, and well, yeah, I really want to kind of stick around home. I'm like, well, I know for a fact that there are no model jobs in Green Bay, Wisconsin, or Bemidji, Minnesota. So you're going to have to move. You're going to have to kind of put yourself out there. And if you want to be a professional, you can choose where you want to live. I mean, the jobs are out there. They're posted on the APMM website. I think if you were to do some research for the different companies, the different model shops and there's hundreds of them, send a letter, say, I'm interested in learning this. As a young person, I think that would impress me. If somebody said, I'm interested in, wrote me a letter, an email, and said, I'm interested in doing this, if I didn't have a position for them, I would ask people that I know that do. I probably work with 5 or 6 other model shops. They're constantly looking for people. The same with machine shops. They're constantly looking for people. They'll train them. They're more than willing to train them. They can't get people to walk in the door and show up every day. That's the problem.
It's kind of scary when you say it like that, being in the employer. That is really kind of scary to me, because that's just not the environment. When I was in the workforce, that was not the environment that we had.
No, it's not the way I grew up.
Peter, I was just thinking about this whole thing. I've been an employer quite a lot of my life, and I just, if somebody showed up with you with a model freight car or a model airplane or something like that, something tactile, something tangible, that'd probably make your eyes light up a little bit more too, wouldn't it?
It certainly would. I help students build their portfolios so that they can show the work they've done. I always, I love a good finished model. Those are great. The best pictures, the ones that I want to know, are what was the biggest problem with this? What was the biggest mistake? How did you solve that problem? I want to see, here's where I drilled a hole through the center of this thing and I had to fix it. That's what I want to see. Yeah. Take a picture of that and then show me, and then tell me your thinking, how you fix that problem. That will sell me every single time. But yes, a finished model. We just hired a young man on contract. He brought in a bunch of slingshots that he had made, custom slingshots. And it's like, well, can we shoot one? So we set up a box in the shop and got some. I'm sure if the safety people were around, they would have had a heart attack. We got some ball bearings and shot a box with a slingshot.
So you get extra points. You get extra points if it's a working model.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Well, at least make us laugh about it. We had a good time doing that. But yeah, I think if somebody came in with just what I'll think of as like a Revell car model or an airplane model, what I built when I was a kid, that we could sit there and talk about the attention to detail and the things that he did or didn't do, and how the joints were put together. And I mean, I look at that, I see it immediately. That's my job. Just as you would look at it and be, I would hope, depending on the person, how critical you would be. But you would pick out the flaws in anyone's model because that's what you do. And you see those things. I like the discussion about the water tanks under the passenger cars. Just all that attention to detail, and then taking it from real life and putting it into a model is really quite interesting.
That's why we have these kind of people on the show.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what this is all about, trying to get people as much knowledge as we possibly can.
Yeah, I think the sharing of knowledge, and that's what the Association of Professional Model Makers is all about. It's really sharing at a professional level when somebody runs into a problem, sharing a solution. There's no magic way of doing it. We've seen the majority of solutions to a lot of problems. I think there's a great example, and I use this example a lot about the APMM. Somebody had a blast cabinet, a water jet cabinet that they clean the build material off of 3D printed parts. And because it's water, it usually has a windshield wiper on the window. You think of it like a sandblaster, but it's water, so it's got a windshield wiper in it. The motor had gone out on that. The manufacturer wanted $200 for the motor. He put a call out on the APMM. Does anybody had this problem? What would I do? I think within 2 minutes, he had 3 suggestions. One was just go to your local auto parts place and get a windshield wiper motor for $9 and replace it. And, so within 20 minutes, he had his tool back up and at least the ability to go buy the part and fix it, but had a solution to it. And that's the type of sharing. And that's what I see you doing here. Very free with your information about technique, talents, why you would use one tool over another. All of those are very interesting, especially if you're a beginning person.
Well, we hope it helps. We really do. That's why we're doing it.
I don't see how it couldn't.
Well, Peter, I want to thank you so much for being here tonight. I really do appreciate it. I know this is a lot of time and trouble for you, but thanks so very much for being here.
It's no trouble at all. I appreciate you asking me to be here, and I'm happy to do it. I've learned a little bit just from watching the little segments up until my part. So thanks for having me. I appreciate it.